Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to Direct Connection. I'm Yolanda Vasquez. Later in our health segment, keeping young athletes safe. But first tonight, thousands of workers do not have access to paid sick leave. Should the law be changed? In the studio now is Melissa Broom, Job Opportunities Task Force Deputy Director. Melissa, it's a pleasure to have you here in our studio.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit more about this legislation that the Prince George's County Council is considering in regards to paid sick leave for workers. And I say is considering because there was a little issue with the County Council President Mel Franklin maybe not putting this on the agenda.
The bill is going to be on tomorrow morning's agenda, we found out today.
Excellent. And what were some of his concerns? Because it sounded like he was quoted as saying the council needs more time to discuss the best approach. I guess they've had that time to discuss it, huh?
I think the council had just reconvened after an August recess. They just came back in last week, and I think it really was just a matter of timing and getting the agenda squared away. So we're happy that it's going to be taken up and that the council is going to have time to really hear from the advocates and discuss this issue.
You said to me that this is really early in the process. We know that there's already a paid sick leave bill that passed in Montgomery County, but you said for Prince George's, this is when we were so early on. Is that what we're seeing, a little bit of the hesitation and just trying to figure it all out?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they just came back from their recess, so they will just be getting started. The bill tomorrow should be assigned to committee, and then we'll go from there and wait for a hearing.
So tell me the specifics of the bill.
So I think it's important to back up and just remember that in Maryland, 40% of workers in our state are unable to earn a single paid sick day. So that's more than 700,000 Marylanders who get up and go to work every day and yet are unable to take time off when they get sick. In Prince George's County, it works out to about 130,000 workers. So again, it's one of the largest districts in the state, and this legislation like this would have a huge impact on working people and working families there.
So how does it work? You have to work a certain amount of hours to accrue 1 day of paid sick leave, right?
Yes. So it's the Earned Sick and Safe Leave Act. The way it works is workers would earn 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours they work, up to 7 days a year for a full-time worker. And part-time workers would also earn sick leave, but it's all prorated and based on the number of hours that you work. I said sick and safe leave. The safe time component is another important part of this legislation. The safe time refers to anyone who's been a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault, that they would be able to use any sick leave that they earn to seek care for themselves, to do things like, for example, if they have to go and file a restraining order or appear in court, that the time that the bill clarifies that they would be able to do that as well.
Interesting that you rolled that into the bill. You found that to be necessary?
Every jurisdiction around the country, I think just about most of them, they all include this safe time component. And I think, most of us hope that people would be able to do that anyway, but we want to clarify and just make sure that it's absolutely certain that workers would be able to use it for that purpose if they needed it.
So are we talking about people who work for small businesses? Because I asked you earlier, they're not covered under their health insurance, and you said this really doesn't have anything to do with health insurance.
Yeah, no, it's not necessarily employees at small businesses. It runs the gamut. And in fact, some very large corporations don't allow workers to earn paid sick days. So it really varies. I think some of the most important things to know, though, are that it tends to be often workers who are the lowest wage workers are the least likely to have access to paid sick days. And also, it often tends to be workers who have the most contact with the public. So, for example, food service workers virtually never have paid sick days. So there's a whole public health angle or public health component to this issue that's important for people to understand, because you can imagine what happens when someone working in a restaurant has to decide whether they are going to make that month's rent and go to work sick, or stay home where they should stay home. And there, people might be eating dinner right now. I don't want to get into the disgusting stories that we've heard about what happens in restaurant kitchens when people don't have this benefit, but it's
I was going
important.
to say, anecdotally, you've probably heard tons of stories. I mean, because that's basically what it boils down to, that people are deciding whether or not they stay home because they're sick to recuperate,
right.
But they can't afford to really do it, or even take care of a loved one, because that's the other part of it. It's not just sick leave for you. It could be your child, it could be your spouse, and so on and so forth, right?
Right. And honestly, some of the most gut-wrenching stories that we hear are from working parents. And I think that's so important. We don't live in a time anymore where dad goes off to work and mom stays home and can deal with every issue that comes their way. So for a lot of families who might be living paycheck to paycheck, something as simple as a kid's ear infection can spell disaster for them. I mean, I have 3 little kids at home. I know what daycare centers and what schools tell you. They don't want your children there. They want them to be fever-free for 24 hours before they can even come back. And but as a parent, when you're responsible for your family, it's a terrible place. No one should have to make that kind of a decision. Do I pump my kid full of Tylenol and put them on the bus and hope they can make it through the day so that I can go to work and again, pay this month's bills, or do I stay home where I think we know every parent ought to be? So these are the kinds of things we hear constantly.
And just to clarify, earned sick leave is very different from FMLA.
Yes, that's right. FMLA is the Federal Family Medical Leave Act. FMLA is really for long-term issues. So when you think it's for 12 weeks unpaid leave, think about things like maternity leave, things like that. This legislation is just for what equates to, honestly, a handful of paid sick days that you would be able to use during the year. You can't, if you wake up and have the flu, you can't take an FMLA day. FMLA is something you apply for. You generally plan for it in advance, and it's for very long periods of time. So totally different.
So I know you said we're early on in the process, but I'm sure you've already had pushback from the business community. What are some of the things that they're saying about this Earned Paid Sick Leave Act or bill?
Yeah, so the legislation, it's exciting to see this movement in the counties. We've also had a statewide bill in Annapolis for the past couple years. So there certainly has been pushback from certain, what often tends to be business associations, the Maryland Restaurant Association, that would be one. I think what I think is important to know is that we have this coalition, the Working Matters Coalition. It's 140 organizations from around the state who are committed to advancing the Maryland Campaign for Paid Sick Days. And many of our members are businesses, are business owners who support this issue because they know it's good for their bottom line. The United States Women's Chamber of Commerce has endorsed the Maryland Campaign for Paid Sick Days. And when you look at the jurisdictions around the country that have passed similar legislation, San Francisco was the first place to do it back in 2007. And it's been long enough there that it's passed that we finally, we have data and we have surveys. And after the bill there went into effect, I love this story. The lead lobbyist who had worked against the bill told Businessweek in an interview that it is the best public policy for the least costs. And in a survey of San Francisco employers, the vast majority of them now support the policy since it's gone into effect. So there has been some pushback, but I think the more, the policymakers get educated about this issue, we see people coming to understand why it's so important.
And similar bills have been introduced in the state legislature. It hasn't passed in the past, I should say, hasn't gained much traction. But do you think the fact that it passed in Montgomery County and now Prince George's is considering it, that might sway the Maryland legislature come back January? I think
all of these, all of this movement in the counties is great. Momentum building, for Annapolis. And I will say last year in the General Assembly, we had 77 co-sponsors of the bill in the House of Delegates, where only 71 are needed to make a majority. So the issue has been gaining more and more traction, and I would expect it to be one of the most talked about working family issues during session 2016.
Has Governor Hogan said where he stands on the side of this, if he's for or against it?
He did not take a position on it last year. He did not prior to the election, when he was campaigning, he did not support it at that time, but I don't know where he stands on it now.
What about from the federal level? You were just talking to me about President Obama. I know that recently he ordered all federal contractors to provide the benefit, but you said earlier this year he was here and it was really pushing hard for this.
Yeah. So back in January, when he announced his administration's support of paid sick days, he actually came to Maryland, to Baltimore, to do it. He did it at one of the restaurants that is a supporter of the Working Matters Coalition. And like you said, last Monday, he signed the executive order guaranteeing that all federal contractors would have to grant paid sick days. So there's a lot of support for this issue from the White House. U.S. DOL Secretary Tom Perez came to Montgomery County for the bill signing when it passed back in July. So there's a lot of support. I think this is an issue we all get. Everybody's been there. We all get sick, and we all know that how hard it would be for us to make ends meet without this most basic workplace benefit.
30 seconds left. What happens next with Prince George's County Council?
I would expect the bill to get assigned to committee tomorrow and a bill hearing in the near future, and we'll go from there.
Melissa Broome, thank you so much for coming to speak with us. We really appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks so much. And just ahead, how parents and coaches can help keep young athletes safe. We'll be right back with our health segment right after this.
Next time on Antiques Roadshow, we're highlighting treasures that survived natural disasters, fires, even heated battles.
Supposedly, it had been shot in several places.
It's too bad that Burl Ives melted away, but that's the problem when he's in a hot attic. I'm so glad it survived.
Me too.
You won't want to miss our special edition Antiques Roadshow Survivors.
Tonight at 8 on MPT.
Once upon a time, an artist invented new ways to amaze and inspire us and created worlds of pure imagination.
No one is untouched by Walt Disney.
But behind the fantasy was a man driven by ambition.
He could come down on you like a ton of bricks.
With unprecedented access to the Disney archives, meet Walt Disney on American Experience.
Tonight at 9 on MPT.
Tonight on MPT2.
On Masterpiece Mystery.
It's the big day then. John and Mary getting married.
Sherlock.
This is the most important day of my life. I need a best man. What do you think?
You mean I'm your best friend?
Yeah, of course you are.
Something is going to happen. There should always be a spectre at the feast.
I need maximum backup. Baker Street now. Sherlock on Masterpiece Mystery. The game is on.
Tonight at 8 on MPT2. On the next Vicious.
How would you like to be my best man?
I'd love to, Freddie.
Well, then act like it.
Stuart and Freddie are tying the knot.
Did you ever think you'd live to see the day?
I wasn't even sure I'd live to brush my teeth this morning.
And hopefully it won't be around each other's necks.
Calm down. Don't you tell me to calm down.
You remind me so much of these guys that live downstairs.
Tonight at 9:30 on MPT2.
Joining us for this week's Your Health segment is Dr. Yvette Rooks, team physician for the University of Maryland Terrapins. Dr. Rooks, it's a pleasure to have you here in our studio.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about it being the start of the fall sports season. Kids are back in school. What is the number one thing that parents should be aware of if they have kids that are interested in playing high school or collegiate sports?
One, you want to make sure that your child is interested in playing sports. A lot of times we have kids who are playing sports for the glory of their parents. We have parents who want their kids to play sports for their glory. So you really want the young person to have an interest in the sport that they choose and be very supportive of them. And also make sure they have the right equipment. They're going into the season conditioned somewhat. They've had some experience at the sport maybe at a lower level, and that they're happy about being part of a team.
So the first step is the physical evaluation, right? What exactly does this entail? And do you go to your primary physician for this?
Well, there's two ways you can have this done. It's called the pre-participation exam that we like to give a student in high school before the season begins, and in college you kind of do it every year. It's really important, and I know that we have mandates that are different throughout each state, but Maryland's one of those states that requires you to have a pre-participation exam before your sports season or before your year.
Pre-participation exam, okay.
Pre-participation exam.
Okay.
And you can do it two ways. You can either go to your primary care physician, who you have a history with, who can perform the exam, especially the musculoskeletal and the cardiac exam, or we can do a team-based approach where you have a group of professionals, some in musculoskeletal medicine, others in primary care, and you rotate from station to station, getting comprehensive evaluations for that part of the body as you go through.
So what exactly, are they looking for anything? I mean, do these exams identify any potentially serious medical problems, cardiac issues, what have you?
They can. See, the big thing is you can have a well-child exam where your primary care provider is doing your well-child and asking about your immunizations and going through your aspect of history and things like that. But the sports exam or the pre-participation exam kind of focuses on those things to look for those glaring problems that could be existed that were overlooked. We look at the blood pressure and maybe how it correlates with your heart sounds. We ask you about head injuries, if you've ever had a concussion, or if you're in a hospital overnight, any major illnesses. Family history is really important, especially for the cardiac piece. If someone died of a sudden death before the age of 50 is really important. So putting those things together, because we want to minimize the risk that we're putting that young athlete into when they play a sport.
Wow, interesting stuff that you can possibly find, because you hear a lot about that. Yep. You hear about a young teenager going in and perhaps having a large heart or something to that effect that they would have never discovered if they didn't do this pre-participation exam.
Absolutely. So it's the key questions that we ask is tying in the current history, the current health of the young athlete, the family history, and what has happened in that athlete's career. So looking at those things are really important, especially the eye exam. You know, a lot of our young people may show up without their glasses and they fail the eye exam, so they can't play until they pass the eye exam. So that's important. So I tell parents when they bring their children in, make sure they have the glasses or they're wearing their contacts.
Yeah, very, very important. You got to do the same thing when you go for your driver's license.
This is true too, right?
I was told about that one time. So every year you hear about all these bad things that potentially happen on the field. Everything from dehydrated players to torn ligaments happening. What are some of the more common injuries that you can see, and does it depend on the sport?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
A lot of times we won't see the sprains of the ligaments or the bruises that happen, but those are probably the most common injuries. What makes the news and what we're really concerned about, we hear about these days, are concussions, the head injuries that are very prominent. We have all this information that we're now gathering for young adults all the way up into our professional athletes. And we hear about the traumatic knee injuries or the shoulder injuries. As young athletes are starting to compete at younger and younger age, we see more overuse injuries or injuries that probably wouldn't have happened in this age group, but now they're on the travel teams, they're playing all year round, they're conditioning. They tend to choose their premier sport at a very young age instead of being cross-trained. So we're seeing more of these overuse injuries, more knee injuries, and then more concussions that are being reported, which is really important for cognitive development as the child gets older. We want to offset those. And I would say the high-risk sports for that, obviously football and men's sports, but women's soccer, we have to be very careful. Women's soccer, women are at a higher risk of sustaining a concussion. It's just the way our anatomy is. And the younger athlete has a longer recovery time than the older athlete. So concussions make the news. I'm very proud of Maryland because we have a concussion policy. Again, for high schoolers across the nation, there's no one unified policy like we have in collegiate sports. But Maryland has a very good policy about that, and it's all our athletic trainers that are in the high schools follow that. And we're trying to put the education out there for the primary care doctors for them to also know how to recognize one, but also if they're not comfortable with diagnosing, to send to a specialist who is.
Is it difficult to determine whether or not a player has sustained a concussion? Because I know there's new rules now. If there's a suspected concussion, there's a lot that goes on. You even see it when you're watching a lot of the games now, right?
Sure. The biggest thing is knowing your student athlete. And I say student athlete because a concussion sometimes cannot be diagnosed right away. But it's like serial exams. So if a student athlete comes out of the game and they just don't look right, Johnny doesn't look right to you, keep them on the sideline for a while. Right. Talk to them. And there are specific questions that our trainers are known to have that coaches should be able to ask and be aware of. And if any of those signs and symptoms are a red flag, they do not go back in the game that day. And they should be evaluated by someone who knows more about concussions to determine how long they'll be away from the game.
So, but if a player does, oh, you pretty much went into that. I was just going to say you have to put them onto, it's better safe than sorry. I was going to ask you if there's specific rules and things, but put them off to the side until you can really follow them.
Right. Anyone with a suspected concussion does not return to play that day.
Period.
And they have to be reevaluated, and they only get returned to sports once they're evaluated by a healthcare professional who can do that evaluation, and they're returned to their athletic trainer who puts them through a series of battery of tests before they go back.
Excellent. We're going to take a phone call right now. We have Maggie on the line from Baltimore City. Maggie, go ahead. Maggie, are you there? Let's see. Line 2. Let's see if Maggie's there.
Sorry.
Maggie, are you there?
I'm here, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yes, please. May I make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you ever so much. As somebody from Europe that played sports for like 9 or 11 years, and my little brothers were not allowed to play Gaelic football until they were like 14 or 15. But now I see in the United States, right here in Baltimore, children being allowed to play football when they're 7, 8, and 9 years old. It's absolutely shocking to us here.
So you think that's too young?
It's absolutely ever.
Okay,
way too young.
Thank you for your comment.
Look at the professionals that have these huge brain injuries. This is what we are caring about in the Irish community, I suppose.
Maggie, thank you so much for your call. Let's hear what Dr. Rooks has to say. Thank you so much. Dr. Rooks?
I agree that, the younger you start, the more at risk you put yourself, especially with the younger kids, because they have developing brains. And the key thing with them is teaching them correct tackling mechanisms, making sure the equipment fits properly. Especially the helmet, and having coaches that are teaching the game and not just to win.
Yeah. My mother used to do this thing with my brother where he could only play certain sports because she thought some were safer than others. Are there some sports that are safer than others? We all know football is a big one.
Well, I would say badminton's a pretty safe sport, but injuries can happen in any sport.
Right.
And you just have to be careful, and you have to know the game and play by the rules.
Yeah, point, period, and blank. That's just how it goes. So beyond the physical, student athletes can also experience mental health issues. What are some of the things that they're experiencing, and how does this manifest itself?
I think that in the world we live in today, the pressures that are put on young people in general, but young people who are playing sports and happen to be maybe very good in sports and have an opportunity to play at a higher level are under tremendous stress. Yeah. There's the anxiety of performing and not making a mistake. There's the pressures of being a good student in school. There's the pressures of performing well for mom or dad. And there are the college scouts who could be looking at you at a very young age, 8, 9, 10, and 11 for some elite sports. And so just think of an 11-year-old with that pressure of trying to be socially fit with their peers, but also being away and being on travel teams, being out of their comfort zone for a while. Tremendous anxiety, sleep disorders appear, and so we're seeing more and more of this. And I know the NCAA is taking a bigger stand and looking at the mental health of our collegiate athletes and putting in certain parameters so we can recognize that and have a certain, each university having a plan for identification of student athletes who have challenges with dealing with all the stress and
there's a lot going on for these student athletes, more than most people realize.
Yes.
Let's talk about the dehydration factor, because that's always a big one that makes headlines in the news. How much liquid should these student athletes be taking in? Should they be resting? Are there certain temperatures where they shouldn't be on the field? Talk to me about that.
Well, it's hard to monitor how much liquid one should take. I don't think there's a finite amount of liquid you can take or expend out. What I tell the student is you shouldn't be thirsty. You shouldn't feel like you're thirsty. If you're thirsty, you're probably behind in your fluid intake. There should always be water available. There shouldn't be set water breaks. Like, we're going to practice for an hour, and then you can have a water break. Water should be free-flowing at the practices. So if someone feels that they're dehydrated or getting dry, they should be able to have water as much as they want. When there's something called a wet bulb temperature, it's really not just the temperature, but it's the humidity that plays a big factor into it. And when we start having these 1- and 2-a-day practices, especially in football, in the late days of August, we really have to be aware. And so it's up to the coaches and the trainers to monitor the temperature and the humid factors in the weather and determine if it's safe to be out there. So we tend to have teams practice very early in the morning before it gets hot, and if they have a second practice, make it late in the day. So the kids have a chance to rest in between. In certain counties throughout throughout the state, and there are state parameters in Maryland that are now monitoring that very closely.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You hear about it all the time when a student athlete is very dehydrated.
Right, they can have heat cramps, and then they can go to heat exhaustion, and then heat stroke is what we try to avoid.
Okay, so that's some of the repercussions of that. We've only got about 45 seconds left. And time goes by so fast. What's the last thing you want to say to parents or any student athletes out there about possibility of playing high school or collegiate sports this year? Something that they should, a takeaway, so to speak.
That being a student athlete is an honor. Ensure your wellness, good nutrition, good hygiene, good sleep will all make you a better student athlete in the long run. And parents, be supportive of your student athlete, whether they're playing or not playing. It's really important just to have that support.
Wonderful stuff. Dr. Yvette Rooks, thank you for your time.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. All righty, Thursday at this time on Your Money in Business, the evolution of law schools in a challenging job market for new lawyers. Now for all of us at Maryland Public Television, I'm Yolanda Vasquez. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful Monday night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.